this video, we are going to see the difference between record trigger flow and Apex trigger. When to choose record trigger flow, when to choose Apex trigger. That's a comparison what we are going to see in this video. So first of all, the availability, right? The scenario and the availability of automation, we are going to discuss. Let's take the scenario as same record field update. For example, I'm trying to create an account record. When creating the account record, if the annual revenue is more than 2 lakhs, I want to set up the rating field as hot. So the record is needs to be updated a field, right? The same record which is responsible for firing the automation. If that is the case, in low code, we can implement the same with the help of before save record trigger flow. After save flow also possible, but that's not ideal, right? And the flow plus Apex combination, that's huge, right? So that's not ideal. And the same scenario can be implemented with the help of a trigger also. Obviously, you guys are familiar with that, low code or no code in the sense, no need to write a single piece of line, Apex line. And as far as trigger is concerned, you will be writing the code, Apex code, right? So next about, high performance batch processing system. You have huge volume of record. If you're having a huge volume of record, then probably you can do that with the help of before save flow, but that's not ideal, right? So flows are not ideal in this aspect. When you have a huge volume of records needs to be processed. If that is the case, then probably the implementation can be with the help of Apex trigger, right? So it is not ideal and trigger is available. You can use that. Cross objects, right? It may be related or non-related objects. If you wanted to update, you wanted to do some operation on one object, you wanted to update the other objects, or you wanted to create another record. For example, whenever an account created, I want to create contact also. If that is the case, the cross objects needs to be done there. So if that is the case, that is possible, in low code as well as that is possible in code also. In both aspects, we can do that, right? Fine. The next thing is the asynchronous processing. Let's say we have a ERP system, separate the third-party ERP system, which is implemented in PHP. Let's imagine. Whenever an opportunity gets closed, the business wanted to notify the third-party ERP system. If that is the case, we need to build an automation, and the automation should send, the order status to the ERP system. So normally, since two systems involved here, we will be doing it in the asynchronous way, right? Asynchronous processing. Asynchronous processing is obviously it's not available in low code in the before record trigger flow, right? Asynchronous processing is asynchronous call is available in after record trigger flow. It is available. You can do that with flow and Apex combination, as well as you can do that with triggers also. From trigger, if you are going to do that, then probably you'll be calling a feature method, and from the feature method, you'll be doing the callouts, right? So asynchronous processing can be done in flow in code as well as a no code also, right? But no code in the sense it's only applicable in after save record trigger flow. Complex list processing. The data type itself is a very huge complex one. For example, it is not an account and object. It might be a combination of classes, right? Classes with more complex data types involved there. That is the complex data you're going to process. If that is the case, definitely the low code solution will not be an ideal one. You always should think about the code perspective, that is from trigger perspective. So these all are the availability of automations for you. You need to, as a developer, you need to take a call which one I should prefer to implement the scenario. Let's discuss more in the next slide. So record trigger flow, basically record trigger flows helps to build automation without writing a piece of code. The huge advantage what I'm looking at this, way of implementing using record trigger flow is the maintenance is very easy, right? If there is anything newly to be added in future, it's very easy. You can quickly add it and test it and deploy it to the environment, right? That is not the case if it is a code-based implementation. When we will think about record trigger flow, basically, when the business logics involved is very simple, as I discussed earlier in the starting of the presentation, whenever an account record gets created, I wanted to update the rating field into hot. This is the business logic, right? The business logic is complex. No, it is pretty straightforward, right? And as well as the number of records are very minimal to be processed. One record, I'm trying to update an account, and each account will have only one contact. So whenever an account gets created or modified, I wanted to create a contact or update the contact. So the number of records to be processed is also very minimal. If that is the case, without any hesitance, you can think about implementing the solution using record trigger flow. The only drawback with the record trigger flow is probably the record trigger flow will consume more CPU time when compared with the same kind of implementation in Apex trigger. We will compare that CPU, cycle differences in the next implementation. So on the other hand, if you look at Apex trigger, it's a little bit hectic to use because you need to manage it, right? The maintenance will be a little bit difficult in the Apex. So the advantage here is whatever might be the complex business scenario, you can easily implement like that, right? If the number of records also huge, then probably Apex trigger will be your right choice. It also consumes less CPU time when compared with flows. But the only problem is the maintenance, the difficult. For example, you have implemented something and you pushed it into your into your production environment. Now it is running in the production. Now the business comes up and say that I wanted to change the business logic. If that is the case, you need to change your handlers, you need to change your test classes, you need to test it again. It involved more development time as well as it involved, more maintenance, right? Which is Apex trigger involved. So that's why if there is more maintenance is involved, it's better to implement using a low code. But the only criteria is how many records you are going to process and how complex the business logic is. That will decide. Okay. And one more drawback, if you look at the undelete automation, there is a record deleted and it is available in the recycle bin. The user is going to undelete it. Now I wanted to do some automation whenever the record gets undeleted. Obviously, as of now, while recording this, we don't have any option in Salesforce flows for this. You have a complete dependency on this scenario on your Apex trigger. So these are some of the scenarios where probably you should take a call whether we have to implement the requirement with the help of record trigger flow or Apex trigger. Let's take a scenario. In an org, we have 5 account records. So totally 5 account records exist. Each account records has 40 contacts. So overall, the number of records exist is 200 contact records and 5 account records. So together it will be 205. The requirement here is whenever the user changes the account records phone number, I want to copy the phone number to the related contacts. For example, account 1, I am changing the phone number, then the phone number should be copied to all the 40 contacts that is under that account. So similarly, if all the 5 accounts records phone number gets modified, then these 200 contacts records phone number also should be modified. So this is the scenario. This scenario, we are now going to see different types of implementations for this scenario, and we will be comparing the CPU time cycles, how it is performing there. So quickly jump to my org for this. I have a already built-in solution. So we will be just comparing the solution and the time cycles involved there. The first solution is I have 2 implementations in record trigger flow, 1 implementation in Apex trigger. So let me just confirm that my Apex trigger is deactivated or not. So let me go to the account. Yes, in the account I have a trigger. It is inactive. That's fine. I have 2 record trigger flows. Both are inactive. I'm able to confirm this with the help of my flow trigger explorer. Both the versions are inactive. First, we will see the first scenario. First implementation. Whenever the account phone number gets changed, I need to modify the contact phone number. So in the entry criteria, I have mentioned as whenever the phone number is changed, this is an entry criteria, right? To update the records, simply I have used only one element and I have used update related records, right? In the related records, I have mentioned the contacts as my related. So if account 1 is going to be modified, all the 40 contacts under that account will be considered here for updation. Right. So similarly, if I'm going to configure or I'm going to modify all the 5 accounts, all the 200 contacts also will be modified. Let's activate this and let's activate and check how the implementation, is taking the CPU time. Let me try to activate from here also. Version 1, I have activated version 1. Okay, version 1 is active. You're able to see version 1 is active. And meanwhile, I have refreshed it in the other, flow builder, and it is activated because we have only deactivate button. It is a confirmation that it is activated. Now let me jump to the developer console. And the developer console, what I'm trying to do here is simply I'm going to initiate account updation. The implementation is whenever the account gets updated, contacts also should be updated. Contact updation implementation is implemented using a record trigger flow. So account updation, you have to do that. So I'm going to do that in a bulkified way. That's why I have written this small snippet here. What this piece of code does. Actually, it is trying to get all the account records whose name starts with test performance. I have created test performance 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 test records I have created. So that's why I'm querying all those 5 account records. I'm looping through all the account records. I'm trying to modify the phone number in the account record. Whenever the phone number modification happens, automatically the record trigger flow will fire and record trigger flow will update the contact records. Let's execute this and let's see how many CPU cycles, CPU time, it is consuming. Let me try to execute this. Now I have modified the, phone numbers, and this is the debug log. If you come here in the debug logs, is there any changes happened? The changes happened is only the account records get modified and no contacts modified because they haven't changed the old phone number. So what I'm trying to do now here is I'm trying to clear the log, and I will be changing the contact number last 2 digits into, let's say, for example, 88. Now let me try to execute this. Now the phone number is actually getting modified. Previously, we have the old, the same, phone number, right? Now, if you look at this particular debug log, let me come here, scroll down and check the debug log. If you look at the debug logs, 205 records gets modified. See how many records gets modified? 205 records, 200 contacts as well as 5 accounts also get modified. Look at the CPU time. Since the implementation is in flow, it is taking 685 milliseconds. So out of 10,000 milliseconds, it is consuming 685 milliseconds to execute this process. So we are going to compare this. So that's why I'm going to take a screenshot and I'll be pasting it in the paintbrush for the comparison. Let me paste it. So what happened in this, execution is we have executed the record trigger flow fired, and the record trigger flow fired, and it took 685 milliseconds to update 205 records. This is the observation, right? Okay, fine. With this observation, now what we are going to do here is, now I'm going to change the automation. Now I'm going to deactivate this automation, and I'm going to activate the trigger. The same implementation I have written using trigger also. Let me go to trigger and we'll explain the code a little bit. It is a pretty straightforward. In the trigger, what I'm doing is in the after account update, I'm querying all the contacts whose account ID matches with the accounts who's getting modified. Right now, all the 200 contacts will be available in the list. I'm looping through the contacts, trying to identify the exact account and its phone number and copying it into the mobile phone number of the contact. So basically, all the 200 records phone number will be copied if the 5 accounts phone number modified, right? So I'm going to make this trigger active. It's a pretty straightforward trigger, nothing fancy here. So the trigger is activated, and let's confirm this. We have deactivated the flow. The record trigger flow is deactivated. Now the automation exists in the form of trigger. Now let me clear the logs and try to execute this. And try to execute the same. Now we need to change the number 88. I'm going to change it as 1, 2, to 2 digits, and I'm trying to execute. Let me try to execute, and once the execution gets completed, and let's see how many records gets updated and what's the CPU time cycle, it consumed. Let me scroll down. Now you see here, 205 records gets updated, right? If you look at that, the number of records getting updated is 205, but the CPU time is 65, very negligible, right? So if you ask me whether this time cycle will be constant all the times, no, this may vary based on the processes which is being running inside your org, right? If some more processes are running, then definitely the CPU time will be changing. It is not going to be the same constant value each and every time when you are going to run. So this is the outcome of the same requirement implementation with the help of trigger, right? So let me paste it and let me paste it here, and let me change this mouse pointer, and let me try to paste it here. So we have pasted it, and now I have moved it here. Now, if you look at here, the same, a number of records processed is similar to the same which we have with the flow, 205 records processed. Look at these cycles. It is 65. CPU time is only 65 milliseconds. When you're trying to execute this, we execute the same with the flow. For the same 205 records updation, it took 685 milliseconds, right? But for the same implementation trigger, it is taking only 65 milliseconds. Suppose if you don't have some other process running behind, your org, then probably chances are there this might be zero. If it is a negligible CPU time also, then the debug log will be shown sometimes zero. So basically the comparison is when we are implementing the same scenario using trigger, it is completing very fast, right? It is completing in a quicker period of time with less CPU time. So with this comparison, let me quickly go to my trigger, and let's deactivate this trigger. And I'm going to deactivate this trigger because I have one more version implementation with Salesforce flows. Let me go to record trigger flow. So this is another implementation for the same requirement. Here, in the previous record trigger flow implementation, we have only one element. Now we have more elements, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then at the bottom you have 1. So 5 elements are here. What is the use of 5 elements? First element, it will get all the contact records, loop through the contact records. First, it will change the contact phone number with the account phone number. And the next assignment, it will copy the contact into a collection. And then finally, I'm updating that collection using the update record element. So this implementation will also produce the same result, but it needs to do some sacrifice. Some sacrifice in the sense it has more elements involved here, right? So let me try to activate this. Let me activate it. It is activated, and confirm the activation in the record trigger, flow trigger explorer. Yes, version 2 is activated, and we have deactivated the trigger also. Let's confirm this. And it is status is inactive. Now let's test the same functionality. Let me close this and clear the logs, and I'm going to execute this. This time, let me change the phone number. Last digit as 790. Now try to execute. I'm executing the same piece of code. That is 5 account records gets updated. As a consequences, automatically all the 200 contacts also will be updated. Now let's study the CPU time cycles. Now, if you look at the CPU time cycles, this is the huge one, right? Now it took 923 milliseconds to update these 20 records plus 20 contacts plus 5 contacts. So to update to 205 records, now the implementation took 923 milliseconds. This is the highest one so far. So let's copy this also. And copy this, and let me paste it in the point. Let me keep it adjacent. Now this implementation also with the help of Salesforce flows. So another user implemented in this way. And unfortunately, this time also it is taking more CPU time cycle for 205 records updation. So less time, or this is trigger is in less time, 1, and this is a little bit better than trigger. And this implementation is, taking more time, right? If you arrange based on the CPU time consumption or the faster way of implementing things, then the trigger is winning the race because it is taking less CPU time, and the flow is taking a little bit more time, and the different way of implementing with more elements is in flows is consuming more than that. So the conclusion point here is, if you are going to implement with low code, definitely you need to sacrifice some CPU time, but you have 10,000 milliseconds, right? 685 is not at all a huge one. So the number of records and the logics involved and the elements also very less, then obviously you can prefer implementing things in flow. The business is very complex logics involved there. Number of records processed to be processed is high, and I cannot implement this without more elements. Then obviously you need to think about triggers. Hope this video might have given you some clarity how to choose what type of automation when there is a requirement comes in.
If you are interested to learn Salesforce, visit AJ Skill Development website. There you can find our course curriculum and you can come to know about the list of courses we are offering. We are offering Salesforce Administrator and Salesforce Development courses. To know about us and the team, you can visit our About Us section. This is an organization we are doing Salesforce training from 2018, and we have trained and guided 2000 plus candidates so far. And if you also want to know about our placement assistance, visit our placement assistance section where you can find the list of people and the category. You can see the list of people who got trained and placed from our side. You can also visit their LinkedIn pages to get to know about our training and also the feedback from the relevant trainees. Okay. And also, if you want to do the course inquiry, click on contact us. You will see the form. You can fill the form and submit the inquiry. Our team will get back to us. Thank you.